Telling Roy today on the phone that I have to make a disclaimer that I should not really be standing here and giving this class. Be it that the topic is Chinuch Habanim, raising children, I very strongly believe that someone that does not have a bunch of teenagers is not ready still to give a parenting class, because parenting is one of the most complex and complicated, really hard topics to talk about, be it that it depends on the kids, on their makeup, on their nature, and the nurture outside, their friendships, and many other aspects and variables, which makes it extremely hard and complex and often very challenging for parents to deal with. I remember still one of my older friends, who now is a prominent Rav, about must be 15 years ago, he started now he's 50, and he started a parenting series and put out tapes and sent it out and all that. This is back the end of tape era, and years later he told me, and they were very good, very fine classes. I think I listened to one of them, one out of four back then. And years later, when he had his own teenagers, he told me, Shlomo, I had such a big mouth. Now that I have the challenges for my own kids, now I know what it means to be mechanech. The children, to raise children, is not so easy, especially in this generation that there's so much going on. Once Rabbi Fran said, I am so happy. I always tell my wife that I'm not in childhood age anymore. I'm still in parenting parsha. I'm still have to do with parenting. I'm not done with parenting. You're never done with parenting. You can never say I'm finished with my children. They could finish you, but you're never finished with them. But I said I don't envy the portion of people who have to raise children, young children in this generation, with the iPhone and iPod and iPad and all of the tablets, no offense, and all the other things that are around us, and the cars, all the things that are going to be in the world until especially 2025, which is less than 10 years from now. The world is going to be totally a different place, and we're raising kids in this generation. It's not a simple thing. So therefore, it's a disclaimer that whatever we're going to discuss tonight, I try to stick to things that are objective, they're not subjective, and hopefully the inspiration that comes from it and the education for myself and for everyone else will be something that we could at least say it's a start to focus more on parenting, and Imrit Hashem, with the help of Hashem, we will have wonderful kids. The Steipler Gaon, Rabbi Yaakov Kanievsky, used to say 50% of raising good kids is tefillah. It's up to Hashem. You have to always pray for everything. This is one of the prayers that we have to have. That our kids should be good in nature, and they should grow up with healthy people. There's so much impact of society, friends, and groups that they grow up with that shapes and forms their personality. And this is part of a prayer of parents, that Hashem should guide the kids in a way that they should always be with good people and be raised and formed with that spirit. Now, that being said, I want to just add one more thing, and then we'll get into chinuch. And that is, see, we Jews, we're obsessed with parenting. No? Aren't we? We're obsessed with parenting. And really one of the things that we have to keep in mind is, especially for people who have a bunch of kids, sometimes just changing this diaper and putting the other one to sleep and doing homework with that and so on and so forth takes away from valuing the same way our relationship with our spouses, the way that it was before the kids came. And that's something that we have to keep in mind. Yaakov Avinu has a very peculiar exchange of words with Rachel, with Rachel, which raises two eyebrows, and it's just really strange. Rachel, after years of not having kids, comes to Yaakov Avinu, comes to Jacob frustrated and says, Hava li banim, please give me children, daven for me. Ve'im ayin meta anochi. And if I don't have kids, it's as if I'm dead. And then Yaakov Avinu, Jacob says, Hatachat Elokim anochi, gets upset with her. He says, am I in place of God? Asher mana mimech, very button, very painful words that has prevented you from having kids. As if to say, and my problem, I have 3 other wives, I have kids from them, it's your problem. They're very painful and sharp words, which our sages, they ask right away on the spot, what is he saying? What's going on with Jacob and Rachel? And one of the profound perushim that I heard was that Yaakov Avinu was not upset at the emotional demand that she was asking, but he was telling her a different point. He was saying to her, look, you're saying that if I have no kids, I'm dead. How about my relationship with you? How about the rest of the blessings that Hashem has given us? And that's not to be taken for granted. So at the same time that we're going to be very focused in next few weeks in Mirz Hashem for this series on parenting and how important it is, and so on and so forth, one should take in the consideration that this should not take away from the bond of the husband and wife, with the time that they spend together. The quality of their life should still be intact. They should make sure still to go out once a week at least in the talk, and the quality time should not be taken away. So now, all of that being said as a preface, now let's get to chinuch. The word raising children, parenting, in Hebrew, the equivalent of it is chinuch. Does anyone know what chinuch means in Hebrew? Education. Does anyone want to disagree with Mr. Goldstein?
Everything.
See, what's the next Jewish holiday that's coming up? Huh? Chanukah. What's the source of Chanukah? Chinuch.
Dedication.
Right?
Dedication.
Oh, so you changed it now. It's not fair.
No, because part of education is dedication.
Part of education is dedication. Now, let me explain to you in short words what Morad just meant.
Exactly.
Chanukah Mizbeach means when they built the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and they were ready for bringing the korbanot, the offerings, and so on and so forth, for 8 days. This was not part of the regular daily services that was done in the Beit HaMikdash or the Mishkan, but for 8 days they had special offerings that was called Chanukah HaMizbeach. And the word chinuch for the first time is used there. That's chinuch. So you can't say really it's education. Chinuch is used for many different things. The word chet, nun, and chaf, chanoch lena'ar al pi darko, which is chosen, the word, the same shoresh, the same root, is chosen for raising children. The same shoresh and root is used for opening up the mizbeach, the offerings and the mizbeach. And really Rashi says and opens the real meaning of this. The true deeper meaning of it is Hachnasat, and I'll translate, Hachnasat Adam Ukeli. It's entering a person or an object to the thing or the purpose that they're going to serve in the future. That is the meaning of chinuch. Meaning, whenever you want to do chinuch, you have to see what is the purpose of this thing in future. When this is going to be ready to be used, what's it going to be doing? And now get it ready for that. So for Mizbeach, it means bringing korbanot, bringing offerings and sacrifices on. For a child, it means see what this person is going to be doing when he is a productive human being, when he is an adult, and make him ready for what he is going to be doing. So chinuch does not mean see where you failed in life and try to push it into your children. It does not mean that he has to become doctor or lawyer or a successful businessman or a genius or an athletic. None of those things. Chinuch means see deep into your child and see what his powers, inner strength are, what he is ready for, and try to promote and grow those things that it has. Let's say if you have an apple tree seed, then you put it in the ground and you make it ready for it to grow, and then you pray to God that this should be a pomegranate tree. What are you doing? You're wasting your time. Because the seed of this is not pomegranate. It's standing to produce something else, something great, but something else. This is the same thing with the kid. The job of parenting is to see to it, this kid has this powers, has this shortcomings. Let me understand my child. And every single child, having 5 little children, I could testify that much, that each one of them, they're so different. Each one of them has strengths and also shortcomings. They're good in certain things, they're not good in others. And you have to understand your children and try to help them become the best that they can be. Not the best that you wanted to be and you failed. Living again through our kids, it's the biggest failure to begin with. So the word chinuch means starting off something in the path that they have to take in the world. Now it's an unbelievable thing. This is a research, it's one of my favorite psychological researches that Michael Joseph made. And I briefly mentioned this in one of my talks on Yom Kippur. He says the best way to be productive in anything, in growing yourself as a human being or raising your children, is imagine, he says the example for yourself. He says imagine after 120 years of productive life, now you are a fly on the wall of a funeral home in your eulogy. And you're listening to yourself being eulogized. And people are talking. Think of what would you want to hear in your funeral, in your eulogy. What would you want to be remembered for? And try to concise all of those things and make 3 points out of them. These are the 3 things that I want to become. I want to be remembered as these things. And once you have that clarity, live your life backwards. This is what he says, Michael Joseph. And this is the same thing with the kids. Chinuch means look at 20 years from now. Decide what it is that you want your kids to look like in 20 years, and now raise them backwards. See what you need for those things. For them to have emotional health, physical health, and be those people who you could be proud of. This is someone that's productive in a society. That is the secret of chinuch. Going back and going forward to try to understand what they are in their seed, in their real inner powers, and envision for that seed what kind of tree it's going to be, and try to make it grow the best that it can. So that's really the thing of chinuch. Now, if I would ask you, what age should be the age of chinuch? Halachically, there is a very big debate. What age is the starting of chinuch for mitzvot? For obligation to do the mitzvot, putting on tefillin, getting ready for tzitzit, all of those things. But aside from the halachic discussion, if I would ask the crowd now, what age should we start preparing ourselves for chinuch? What would you say? I'm open. I'm listening.
Day one.
Day one.
My wife says 20 years before. My wife says 20 years before.
Don't listen to her. She's cheating. That's correct actually, because she was in my previous shiur. This is actually a very fascinating report in a newspaper in Europe, in Volozhin. The event, these are Gentiles, non-Jewish newspaper that went and wanted to know the Jewish outlook on raising kids. And who's better than the leading Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the first yeshiva in Lithuania, Rab Chaim Mivolozhin, the legendary student of Gaon Mivilna, Rabbi Eliyahu Mivilna. And they asked him this question, said, look, in our society we start in this age. What do Jews do? And he said, we prepare for chinuch, for raising kids 20 years before they're born. To which the Gentile said, what? And he started explaining. He said, look, it's hard enough to change yourself. How easy it is to change one of our characteristic traits? It's very hard. They bring from Rabbi Israel Salanter, used to say it's easier to master the entirety of Talmud and know it by heart than change one of your character traits. It's very hard. And he said, look, it's actually a very interesting story from Rab Zusha in Salant. He was a person that people really benefited from him. He was a revolutionary figure in European Jewry. And he said once about himself, he said, look, when I was a kid, I said, I'm going to change the entire world. And then I grew up a little bit more. I said, the whole world, I can't do that. I'm going to change my entire country. And then I became a little older, a little wiser. I said, that's too much also. My city. And then my neighborhood. And I said, when I was mature enough, I realized that I'm going to stick to myself. Not the world, not the country, not the city, not the neighborhood, not even my family. The only way that I could really, in a profound way, change the world is if I could affect myself, if I could change anything of myself and be a better human being. Then by default, anyone that's around me, they're going to be affected by a genuine human being that's living among them. And they want to emulate the ways of that. That's exactly what Reb Chaim Volozhiner told this person. He said, look, if you want your kids to be wonderful people, they have to see an example of a wonderful person. So it takes 20 years before you have kids to try to master and be a person that your kids could look up to and say, look, I want to be like my daddy. I want to be like my mommy. This is something I want to live my life by. Sharon, do you agree?
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah, absolutely.
And actually, it's very interesting. I used to study with a Rav, which is known as one of the foremost people that couples go to for getting married advice, and then afterwards for Shalom Bayit, in between husband and wife. And he told me a fascinating research. I haven't looked it up myself, but he said like this. They went to different families that, any of the couple, either the husband or the wife, they're coming from a broken family themselves. And they studied them. Half of them, let's say, they said, when we were kids and we saw our parents fight, we said to ourselves, it's never going to happen to me. Never. I'm going to be so nice and so kind and so forgiving and so on and so forth. And then the other half, there are people who grew up in a type of family and they just, by default, they follow the ways of their parents. But here is the interesting part. The research shows that even that half that decided never again and never by me, 90% of them, when they were put in the situation that something happened and it was a moment of anger, a moment of hardship, they did exactly like what their parents did. The same reactions that their parents had, because that's all they saw. And the effect of that, what you see as a child at home, is so profound and so deep that it's going to stay there. It's very hard to get rid of it. So really, to make a good nature for our kids, if we control ourselves in our interactions with each other and with the people, we are making our second nature becomes their real nature, because they see parents who are calm, parents who could deal with each other, listen to each other, and even when they have disagreements, the disagreements are in a way that you could learn from. Now, it's an interesting thing in the Gemara, talking about disagreements of parents. You know, in the book of Deuteronomy, in Devarim, Parshat Ki Tetzeh, it says, there's a topic of Ben Sorer More, a child that is rebellious, and he's stealing and cheating and eating, meat and drinking wine, and he could get so bad that the Torah says he could even have death penalty by the Beit Din. Very interesting and peculiar parasha. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says, on page 71, it says this, at least according to one opinion in the Gemara, this never happened and will never happen. This mitzvah of the Torah never happened and will never happen. It's not a question, is. Because the reason for it is, it has so many conditions for this. This is only if this happens between 13 and 13 and a half. Only that in that window of 6 months. And it has done many, many, many other qualifications, and therefore the Gemara says it never happened. The question is, if it never happened, what's the point of having it in the Gemara? What's the point of having it in the Torah? I think one of the things that we could take out of it, and the Mefarshim already say that, is that Ben Sorer Umorer, the Gemara, the Mishnah and Gemara explain that in order for this son, this boy, thank you. In order for this person to become a Ben Sorer Umorer, it has to be, thank you so much, it has to be that none of the parents could be deaf. This is one of the Gezrat HaKatuv, this is the statement of the Torah. They have to be able to hear. If one of the parents is deaf, as bad as the kid is, it's still not punished. That's A. And the second is, the mother and the father, they should have the same exact voice. Can you imagine that? So now you know why it never happened. So what's the pshat with this? What's going on in the Torah? I think that one of the profound understandings of this is that if this never is going to happen, then we ought to say that the Torah is teaching us how to guarantee that we're not going to have a rebellious child like that. And the Torah is saying the following. The Torah says, if the parents are deaf to their own messages that they're sending to their kids, of course the child is going to become a Ben Sorer Umorer. If the parents tell the child, don't cheat or don't lie, and when someone calls, the father says, just tell him I'm not available. Just tell him I'm not home. So what are you teaching your kids? If you come to shul, you bring your kids to the shul, and as you're talking to your friend, you tell him to daven, the message that you're sending is that the shul is a place, that Knesset is a place for me to talk and for you to pray. That's not going to work. He's going to grow up and he's going to talk in the synagogue, in the shul. Because you're sending that loud message. Mark Twain once said, he said, your actions are so loud that they can't hear you. They can't hear your words. Our actions, what we do in front of our kids, speak much louder than the words that we preach to them. And that's what the Torah is saying. It says, if you yourself are deaf to your messages that you're sending to your kids, there's no hope for those kids. Because they're going to listen to your actions, not to your voice. And the second message of the Torah also is that if the parents together, they don't have a unified front, the united front, and their voice is not exactly the same, the messages that they're sending to the kids are very different from each other, then the kid is going to grow up and become a rebellious kid. Whatever you do not argue about big things in front of the kids. There's time for deciding, sitting, and going out for a walk or for a dinner, and you'll discuss it together, but come out with one decision. And the kids should be confronted with that one united front. If the father says one thing and the mother says a different thing, that's ground for a Ben Sorer Umorer, that's ground for a rebellious child. Because he grows up saying, you know what, anything goes. Ma says this, dad said this, I could do whatever I want. If they could do whatever they want, I could do whatever I want to. versus a family that has values and the parents are just sending the same exact unified message to the kids, the chances of having a rebellious child in that house is much, much slimmer, much less than the first scenario. So those things are basically the things that we do that's dependent on us before even we start any psychology of kids, any of those things, before all of those researches. What we do ourselves impacts the kids in a phenomenal way. And much of it could come up maybe 20 years down the road. Teaching through example, that's something that's so profound that nothing else could even come close to it. So this is the first class that we're talking, and Emir Hashem, in the few more sessions that we're going to have, we're going to discuss a lot of researches in psychology. You're going to have much to say about what Torah has to say about this, and a lot of stories. But this, being an example to our kids, is perhaps 70 to 80% of the job. I want to end with a fascinating story, and then leave some room for questions. This happened. This is an unbelievable story. Happens to be true. Not all the stories you hear there are true. Actually, in fact, once I said there was this Bat Khan, a comedian that's the Hasidim. In Hasidic communities, in their weddings, they bring a comedian, a very frum, very interactive and smart, very sharp comedians. And one of them said the following. He said, "I'm saying all these stories," and one person came to me and said, "Why are you making up all the stories from yourself? I say, yeah, at least you have to say true stories." And I said, I had it with this guy. I went to the Debetziner Rav. The Debetziner Rav was a tremendous posek. Rav Moshe Stern, his name was. So I went to ask him, is it mutter to make up good stories as long as the point of it is true and people get inspiration from them? And I went to the Debetziner Rav's office. He was sitting in his office, and I asked him this question. He put his head down and he thought for 5 minutes, and then he picked his head up. He said, "Look, if the point of it is true and people are going to get inspiration from it, you could make up stories." And he said, since then, Baruch Hashem, I've been making up stories that the point is true, including the story that I asked the Betziner Rav. But this story is actually true. This happened in Mir Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim. There was one of the top Bachurim of the yeshiva, the students. He was a genius, very diligent, the top of the line. He was the best student in the yeshiva. You can imagine someone with mental capacity, and his midot and his character was just phenomenal. He was the hero of the yeshiva. Everyone looked up to him. He was known as a person that everything that he does is right. All his decisions are to the point. And he was getting married. And in the yeshiva they had a Sheva Brachot for him, and he got up to speak. He said the following story. He first thanked the host and people who threw him the Sheva Brachot and the party. Then he thanked his parents for raising him. He thanked the wonderful family of his Kala, the wife, the bride. And then he said a story which he called it a turning point in his life that was astonishing. Everyone just couldn't believe it. The story goes like this. He says, when I was in 5th grade, one of my friends, we call him Naftali, came to school one day with a phenomenal watch. Very expensive, beautiful, shiny. And his mother had warned him not to bring it to the school. Not to bring it to the school. Because maybe it's going to break, maybe it's going to get lost. But he didn't listen. He was too excited to show it off to his friends. He came to the school like this, obviously. And he showed it to everyone. Everyone was gathering around him. He was in the air. Then time came for recess, and he wanted to play ball. The watch was not there. And he was broken. He said, how am I going to go home to my mom without the watch? He started bawling and crying. He was so broken. He went to the Rebbe. That session after the break, they had Gemara session, and Rebbe was there. Went to Rebbe and said, the whole story, and said, I can't go home without it. And he was crying. And the Rebbe saw his broken heart. So he got the attention of the class. He said, look, we all saw in the morning what a beautiful watch he had. And I could see that someone wanted to look at it, play with it, maybe by mistake put it in their pocket. If anyone knows where this watch is, please give it back. Everyone nervously is looking around if anyone's going to do anything. No voice. Then he says, look, I was standing in the hallway and no one went into the class from outside. So it should be someone from within the class. If someone has it, please come and put it on the table. No one walked. So he said, look, if no one puts it, we have to line up everyone and I have to go through their pockets. And that's exactly what he did. He had all of them line up in front of the class. And one by one he started looking into their pockets. And says Ar Khatan, the groom, the top student of the Yeshivat Mir, he says, I was the third online. And when he started looking into my pockets, the hope that I was hoping that he's not going to find it was not going to happen, because he was very meticulous and he found the watch. He took it out of my pocket. And I was scared to death. I thought he was going to scream at me and punish me. Instead, he just moved to the next person and to the next person. And he searched every single person in the class. When he was done with the last one in the line, he said, now everyone could go back to their seats. I have the watch. He says, I was almost crying as I walked back to my seat. And I knew what he did. He says, there and then I decided that in my life I want to become someone like him. And he said, for the rest of the class, he avoided even looking towards my direction. Maybe someone is going to figure out. He says, that's a human being, I want to be like him. Rabotai, we want our kids to look back after their teenage years and say, you know what? I want to be like my parents. They're real human beings. I want to follow their footsteps. Thank you for listening. Now, please, I'm open to questions. Did you make that story up?
When you were saying that you have to find each individual kid's personality or their own character traits, because I feel like it's so hard to find your own, it's probably just as difficult to find theirs as well. What would be...
That's a very valid question, and it's not going to be an overnight process. It's something that takes years. You don't see their full personality till they grow up a little bit. When they're 5, 6, you start seeing different nuances. Some of them are more social, some of them are more to themselves. Some of them, they're very open and giving, some of them are more taking. Some of them are very smart and very witty. Some of them are very private and shy. And all of those things make up the personality. The collective things of different midot make up a personality of a human being. So it's something that's a process, a few-year process, that you little by little get to know your kids, and you try to work with the best of your knowledge. But definitely, putting a child that's extremely shy through something that you would put a kid that's extremely popular and outgoing is not going to be the same scenario. Sometimes you have to be sensitive to the kid saying, I don't want to be there, I'm just embarrassed. And he means it. And the other one is just getting out of it. He has no problem with being shy. He's very popular, he's very outgoing, he just doesn't want to do it. And for him, you may push him a little bit more. Examples, we're gonna elaborate on these points, each one of the things that we said tonight. In next sessions, Imrit Hashem, time allowing, we're going to elaborate on details of those things. But it's something that you get the picture. It's a long-term process. You're never done with parenting. When as they grow, you see different nuances, different things that come up in their personality, and those are all going to go into your computer processing your son's or your daughter's personality and see how you're going to react to them. Yes.
Follow up,
I thought you're done with it.
follow up to this question. So another thing that you said is that helping them to become who they want to become. So imagine that you find a child who is either too stingy or too giving. And in your opinion, you think that it's better to have a balance. Would you allow each of them to go on the path that they're going, understand that who they are? Or would you try to bring them to the balance, which is again, you intruding your own
That's
thoughts and ideas to them?
That's a wonderful question. So it's like this. This is really, I'm going to oversimplify and encapsulate the answer. Really, that's going to be a part of what we're going to discuss in future, but very short, you cannot break the nature of a person. Reb Chaim Vital, the legendary student of the famous Kabbalist Arizal, he himself was the writer of Kitvei Arizal, he writes in one of his works, he says, Inyan midot tevuot ba'adam. That means the character that the person is born with is etched in him. It's not something that you could just do hocus pocus and it's changed. It's something that is going to remain with them for years to come. And again, changing it is very hard. So what you want to do is, as he said, to make a balance, which is going to be giving them, not breaking what they have, but giving them and educating them that giving to others is something important. And when you give, you are a bigger person. Your me includes others. It's not that you're giving to others, you're realizing that just like your wife is you, is a part of you, your kids are part of you, you could have a person that his me includes a community, a city, or it could be the whole world. And that is greatness. When this message is sent to them in different ways with calmness and with care, enough times is going to sit. And it's something that intellectually they're going to know, and that intellect, if it's strong enough, is going to balance out their nature. Same thing with the person that's too giving. You tell them the fact that you have to not be, first of all, taking advantage of. And secondly, there is a time that your household, your wife, your husband, your kids come first. You can't be just giving and giving, because that is taking away from someone else. So giving is something subjective. If you're giving to someone on the account of taking from someone else that deserves it, so that's not really giving. And again, that intellect that you're putting into their mind is something that's going to control their nature.
So therefore, what you're saying then, it's an addition to what you said earlier, because I thought that earlier you said that helping them to become what they want to become, but then now you're talking about interjecting what you as a parent believe to be true. And so not only help them is important, then a series of thought, ideas, and ideology come into
100%, meaning there are certain things that are objective. You know, part of a healthy human being is someone that is not taking advantage of, and also someone that does not take advantage of others. That's a healthy human being that has that balance. And given that the parents have that balance themselves, they could definitely, they should try to educate their kids that should be something on their agenda, right?
From what age, Rabbi, do you recommend that? From what age do you try to start to, I guess, you know, telling, I guess, like trying to fix their traits, their characters? Is it just from the very beginning, or?
So what we discussed tonight, which is role modeling,
Role modeling is 20 years before,
and they see it from the very beginning.
Right.
Those things that you're actively going to get involved, which we haven't discussed yet, really that's for later topics that we're going to talk, it depends on what they are. Certain things are at all not a big deal. Let's say we have a rule in our house that anything that they do, which is childish things, that if we would be to ask, would they do this when they're 30? The answer would be no, they're not. So that's not a big deal because it's a thing of their age and they're gonna grow out of it. But things that could stay with them, lying, cheating, stealing, taking advantage of other people, those things that a person grows up with, depending on their mental capacity, given that they understand what you're doing with them, and this is a consequence and reward system, then you start it. It depends on the intelligence of the kid, depends on the age.
Things like hitting, biting, pushing, these are like childish things you would consider.
As long as it's not dangerous. Yes.
Since no husband and wife are exactly the same, and you still want to bring a kind of united front, like you were saying, to the child, right? Of course, you did discuss on items like, loyalty, morals, morality, all these things that you want to teach the child. Yes, that as a united front should definitely be. Should you always try to like side on, even if one doesn't believe exactly, because it's never the same exact thing. You're not the same
Right.
person, right? You have to still
Very valid
discussion,
question. 100%. So actually, I alluded to this when I said it. If you remember, I said big things. The big things should always be a united front. But I think there's a value into kids seeing a disagreement that's handled in a right way between
Respectful,
parents,
yeah.
because that prepares them for a society that people are different, right? If the mother says something and the father says, wow, you mean, and starts explaining why the mother is saying that and what's good about that, and then it says, well, how about this, how about that point, and he's saying his own things, disagreeing with the mother, but it's in a gentle way, in a way that the child comes out and says, wow, this is how I'm going to speak to my peers. So that child in school, when someone says something, he's not going to start yelling and screaming and says, who told you have even a voice to say, you're wrong. When someone speaks like that, you know where they picked it up from. It used to actually. Nowadays they picked it up probably from the media or from the school. But a child that sees a healthy disagreement between the parents, he grows up knowing how to present his view of life in a healthy way without getting broken, without getting agitated, or without feeling that people are attacking him. He says, you have your way of thinking, I have my way of thinking, and let me explain to you what I think. In a healthy way, and I think that's invaluable. There's a value to that. Yes?
I feel like getting to that point takes a lot of practice, which means trial and error, and that means a few arguments, let's say. What do you do with those arguments that were seen?
Look, that's the less of it, the better, no? The more talented you are and the more you're on top of it, the less of those you're going to have, and the less the better. Certain things we can't avoid. Again, we are talking to ourselves, which none of us really started 20 years before having a child, so we are 20 years behind. But the sooner you start, the better it is. Yes.
This might seem like a stupid question, but where do you draw the line with your kids, especially infants, toddlers, where on one hand you want them to experience things and learn the hard way, and on the other hand you want to protect them? For example, they want to climb somewhere, you know they're going to fall, they're going to hurt themselves. Okay, maybe you didn't know they're going to break a leg, but they're going to, get injured, but you want them to learn. You can't climb up chairs the hard way, or you shouldn't.
Feeling your kid is climbing up the wall.
Yeah, maybe.
So
Yeah.
both of these things have truth in them. I remember when we moved as I was a teenager, and my brother was a toddler, he was a little kid, and we moved to a new house which had 3 stories and a lot of steps and so on and so forth, and we weren't used to protecting child safe. So he fell a few times, and then after a month it just wasn't a problem, right? And then someone came to visit our home, and he looks at my brother, looks at us, he says, you guys are crazy? This kid could kill himself. I said, we haven't had problems. So the truth is, if it's something that's dangerous, you want to avoid. If it's something that could, but if it's one step and you watch them, they go down, up a few times and they learn how to go. You know, you can't, you know, there's certain limits that you can't, if you feel that you have to be walking with your kid with a leash the whole day, something is wrong. If you make the house child safe, and then you make sure they're not climbing in the beginning stage when they start climbing up chairs and then they fall down because they don't know what it means. So you teach them, you watch them a little bit till they learn how to back, you know, from the back come down and so on and so forth, and that will be fine. But sometimes it takes some breaking bones, you know. I have a few of those.
So it's like in continuation to that, is it bad to keep saying no? Or do you redirect? Like, I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm saying no a lot to my son. Like, no, not here, no, not here, no, not here. So, and sometimes I feel like maybe I shouldn't be saying no so much.
We're gonna discuss that at length in next session. Discipline versus encouragement, and the ratio, and so on and so forth. That's something we're going to at that in depth.
That's why a lot of Persian people start a sentence no.
Right. That's the first word a Persian boy knows how to say. No and mine.
No,
Yes.
Oh, I find myself with my 2.5-year-old, like I find myself always like bribing him with food. Like, oh, if you go to the pond, you gotta
That's very good. Other Persian mommies, they're chasing their kid with food.
But like that's what you said tonight. Like when he grows up, do I want him to be like rewarding himself with food? Like, you
Right.
know?
That's another subject we're gonna discuss, but I'm gonna once he asks, I'm gonna just very short. I'm gonna say, see, the system of
Like
rewarding.
candy.
What's that?
Like,
Not food,
like
like candy,
a cookie.
sweets.
Okay, so the system of rewarding. The system of rewarding is something that even Rambam talks about it. Rambam writes in the in his commentary on Mishnayot in Sanhedrin Perek Chelek, right? Actually, your husband is just learning it now. Rambam writes there. It says, "Do not think that the kids are going to do the right thing because it's right. Don't expect that because," and he calls it doing it lishma, doing it for the sake of God. He says, "I wish me and you should be like that," the Rambam says. He says, "Halvai, me and you should be like that." He says, therefore, the reward system is a very healthy system. And he goes to explain, when they're little kids, you give them candy. When they grow up a little bit more, you give them money, coins, then you buy them something bigger. But that has to have limits. If every little normal thing in life that a normal person should be doing gets a candy, then the child learns to abuse the system and just say, if you want me to eat my lunch, give me a candy. If you want me to go to school, give me 10. If you want me, and there's no end to it. So therefore, there's certain things that, you know, it's up to their limits. They're doing something positive. And it's not part of their daily activities. Going to sleep doesn't get a candy. Eating lunch should not get a candy. Going to school should not need a candy. Learning an extra piece of information, which they're using their time wisely, that gets encouragement. Because they could use their time like this, they could use their time like that. If instead of watching a worthless piece of movie or whatever, they're sitting and learning something that's good for them, and they know that's good for them, and there's a reward system, that's something very healthy. If they control themselves when they're upset with their siblings, or when they have something and they don't have to share it, and we're going to speak about that, the sense of ownership, that's a healthy sense of self and definition of self that the kids should have, but at the same time they understand that their sister, their little brother, their little sister wants it and they share a little bit, that's something positive that gets a reward system. So it is good, but it has to be limited to things that it's their positive choice that's giving them the reward, not that they're getting reward for any activity that a normal kid their age should be doing. Thank you for listening.